The American Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has held a surprise media conference to affirm his support for the president, saying he supported his foreign and domestic goals. It comes after reports on television, the network NBC, that Mr Tillerson recently threatened to quit and referred to Donald Trump as a moron. Here's our Washington correspondent, Simon Marks.
Did he or didn't he? That's the question gripping Washington after NBC News reported that Secretary of State Rex Tillerson recently called President Trump a moron. The phrase was apparently used by a furious Secretary of State following a highly political speech that President Trump made in July to the Boy Scouts of America.
Do you remember that incredible night with the maps? And the Republicans are red and the Democrats are blue. And that map was so red, it was unbelievable, and they didn't know what to say.
Like many, Rex Tillerson, himself a big scouting enthusiast, was infuriated by that speech, believing the Scouts were being inappropriately dragged into the political arena. Indeed, the scouting movement eventually distanced itself from the president's remarks. So, NBC and then CNN reported that Mr Tillerson decided to quit, only to be talked out of resigning as Secretary of State after several interventions by Vice President Mike Pence. Mr Tillerson, reading from a very carefully prepared statement, denied that claim vehemently.
The Vice President has never had to persuade me to remain as Secretary of State because I have never considered leaving this post.
But what about the use of the word moron? Asked directly whether he'd disparaged the president in that way, he danced on the head of a pin.
This is what I don't understand about Washington. Again, I'm not from this place. But the places I come from, we don't deal with that kind of petty nonsense.
Now, for a man who denies knowing much about the way Washington works, that sounded like a classic Washington failure to answer a direct question. So everyone assumed that, yes, Mr Tillerson must have used the word moron to describe his boss. Several hours later, his press secretary Heather Nauert had a go trying to set the record straight.
The secretary did not use that type of language to speak about the President of the United States. He does not use that language to speak about anyone.
So she says he didn't say it, but her credibility is in doubt from the get-go, because just last weekend she seemed unaware that North Korea had developed nuclear weapons, and that's something you'd think the State Department spokeswoman would know. That, of course, was the same weekend when President Trump was busy pulling the rug out from underneath Rex Tillerson. He was in Beijing trying to negotiate a solution to the crisis on the Korean peninsula when the president tweeted that he was wasting his time and that diplomacy wouldn't work. On Capitol Hill, Republicans like Senator Bob Corker, once tipped to be President Trump's Secretary of State, had their heads in their hands.
Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, and Chief of Staff Kelly are those people that help separate our country from chaos.
So perhaps it is comforting that for the moment at least Rex Tillerson remains US Secretary of State. President Trump says he has full confidence in him and dismissed the news reports as made up and bogus. A conclusion that some in Washington think only serves to validate Rex Tillerson's original judgment of him.
Simon Marks reporting from Washington.